In the Qixi Festival, a day of lovers' carnival, Gu left blank and became a sandwich biscuit. On the one hand, she was paid by a big man, and on the other hand, she urged her parents to date until she was bound to the reverse marriage system. World 1. Crossing time and becoming a mom. No problem. What? Her daughter, as beautiful as a flower, is going to be arched by a scumbag. How can this be tolerated? World 2. One day, Gu Liubai became the mistress that everyone shouted for. She fled without hesitation and found a more beautiful woman as her support. The scumbag came to his door and Gu Liubai repeatedly asked, "Do you have any money from my family's backer? Do you have my backer who looks beautiful? Do you have a reliable support for my family?" World 3. Strong twisted melons, not sweet. Gu Liubai found herself in a novel written by the CEO Ba. Her husband was the CEO Ba, who had been guarding her first love for over a decade, and she was the tool person who was occasionally pulled out to sneak around. It wasn't until one day that she began to stop acting. World 4. Alternative dating programs. World 5. Mosquito blood in stand-up literature. World 6. Abandoned consort of the cold palace. World 7, 8. Undetermined. No CP, quick to wear, refreshing keywords of the novel. Black Lotus without emotions, no pop-ups, Black Lotus without emotions, complete collection download, Black Lotus without emotions, latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Reminder of marriage. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Reminder of marriage. Qixi Festival, also known as Chinese Valentine's Day. Gu Liubai hurriedly crossed the overpass, with dim lights in the distance and countless couples nearby. This day, for others, is a special day, but for Gu Liubai, it is the same as her usual day. An unfinished job, a difficult boss. The phone in the bag suddenly rang. "Hello. Mom," Gu Liubai replied weakly after being squeezed all day. "Bye-bye, have you had dinner yet?" Gu's mother's friendly voice rang in her ear. "Not yet." She touched her empty stomach. "Should I wait in line with those couples and have a full meal, or just casually find a roadside stall to eat?" Gu's mother on the other end of the phone seemed to have a telepathic connection with her. "Bye-bye, the things we bought outside are not clean. Why don't you come back? Mom makes delicious food for you every day." "Mom, I just found a job, don't tempt me." Gu Liubai shook his head. Her probationary period has not yet passed, and she is resigning at this time. It will be difficult to find a job again next time. "Ouch, Mom. You don't know, today's Qixi Festival, your father cooked a table of good food for Mom. There was fish and meat, but your father and I ate alone. It was a bit boring." Gu Mu was also wronged. She could not keep her voice low on the phone. "Mom, you don't know what good fortune you are in the midst of it." Gu Liubai smiled and couldn't say it, otherwise the more you said, the more greedy you really became. Just had a few words with Gu's mother when his father snatched the phone. "Bye-bye, Dad, do you have a boyfriend now?" A voice full of confidence came from the other end of the microphone. Gu Liubai didn't understand why the topic got crooked when he said it. "No, Dad, why are you asking this?" Gu Liubai actually had some resistance to this question. Dating, getting married, having children, these vague things seem to summarize a woman's life. Dad is just asking. By the way, Dad has a friend, and his son doesn't have a girlfriend either. How about you two chat? Gu's father stopped beating around the bush with Gu Liubai and pointed out the fundamental reason for making this phone call. "Oh, Dad, I know now. When I have time to talk to him, I'll hang up first." Gu Liubai hung up the phone with a loud bang and patted her chest. Fortunately, she hung up the phone in time, otherwise his father would never have gotten up, and she might have fainted. She didn't even pay attention to what Gu's father had just mentioned. What kind of illusion was it that made Gu think she needed a boyfriend? Is the game not fun anymore? Is there too little food? Or is the beautiful man in the TV series not good looking anymore? Or rather, she has too much free time after work. Gu Liubai warns himself. Cherish life and stay away from men. Just after a moment of silence, another phone call came in. Pick it up and take a look. Oh my, it's the god who pays her. Regardless of whether the other person can see it or not, a flattering smile first appeared on their face. Good evening, Mr. Zhang. Is there something wrong with being so late? I have to mention that she was scared by her sweet and annoying voice, and almost vomited. Xiao Gu, are you still in the company now? Didn't we just receive the funds transferred from Wanan Enterprise? Please organize the information and send me a copy. Mr. Zhang in the company is just a smiling tiger, always polite when talking to anyone, but in reality, he has a deep understanding. Gu Liubai, this scumbag, dare not offend this big shot. Okay, Mr. Zhang, but I'll have to wait a moment. I'm currently outside and I'll give it to you in about 15 minutes. This job is both a challenge and a training for Gu Liubai. Just as I put my phone back in my bag, Gu's mother's call came in again. Daughter, a thought flashed through Gu Liubai's mind upon hearing this voice. Just now she was on the phone with Mr. Zhang, and her voice was similar to this. I don't know how Mr. Zhang can hold back his laughter. At first glance, it seems like the weasel is paying New Year's greetings to the chicken, not with a good heart. Mom, speak normally, otherwise I'll be scared. Gu Liubai imitated Gu's mother and deliberately spoke with a pinched voice, You child, you just owe me a beating. Gu's mother was furious and even disdainful of pretending. Let me tell you, your father's friend's son, who is a talented person, was poached by a big company just after graduation. I saw a photo of the young man and it looks pretty good. But you make me very worried. If you don't bring someone back by the end of the year, I will break your leg. Hang it. Gu's mother said she really got hung up, but this time it's Gu Liubai's turn to be foolish. She held her phone, considering whether to call back, and then cried bitterly at Gu's mother, shouting. I can't do it. Little sister, buy a bouquet of flowers. The childish voice interrupted Gu Liubai's imagination. A little girl struggled to hold a large bouquet of roses and looked at her earnestly. Children, how old are you? Do your parents know that you came out to work at such a young age? The girl nodded with a smile and said, I'm 10 years old, my family knows. Judging from the girl's attire, her family should not be considered wealthy. A pair of eyes are very agile, and the smile is sweet. The floral dress has turned slightly white after washing, but it's better than being clean. No wonder she came out to work at such a young age. Gu Liubai felt compassion and bought half of the roses. Sister, here are the flowers for you. The little girl handed a large bouquet to her hand and said, Sister, you don't have a boyfriend yet, do you? How pitiful. The smile on Gu Mingrong's face suddenly lost its highlight, and she was ridiculed by a little girl. Poor. Does she need someone to pity her? It's really off the charts. Turning back and smiling at the girl, she looked like the wicked queen in Snow White who lured the princess to eat poisonous apples. Child, you said it very well, but don't say it again next time. Standing up straight, looking at the beautiful flowers in my hand, my mood remained beautiful. Who said single women cannot buy flowers for themselves on Valentine's Day? Women do not grow up dependent on anyone, just like the rose in their hand, with or without the blessing of love, it still blooms beautifully. Buying flowers delayed for a few minutes, and Gu Mingrong was about to take a shortcut back to the company when his phone suddenly rang. Let's take a look together. A stranger applied to add WeChat. Gu Liubai guessed that the other person should be the son of an acquaintance introduced by her father. He opened his profile picture and squinted his eyes slightly. If she guessed correctly, the bottom left corner of the photo is a lipstick, and the other person is likely to have a girlfriend. Young Feng Yin, this skill is even more impressive than oneself. Just as she was lost in thought, an accident happened when a car suddenly drove out of the alley and collided with a railing on one side. The car overturned and charged straight towards her. Suddenly caught off guard, my body quickly fell backwards, and in front of me was a gray-blue sky and a high-pressure wire like a spider web. The back touched the ground first, and there was a click sound. The pain immediately engulfed her whole body, causing her to spasm and her consciousness to become increasingly blurred. She wants to. Are you dead? Sure enough, cherish life and stay away from men. Especially the introduced blind date. Ding. Given the strong desire of the host to survive, the reverse marriage system has been activated. Based on the principle of unity, the system gives the host a chance to survive. Do you agree? 3, 2, 1, ding. System binding successful. I have opened a new book, every day at 10 o'clock, 2 chapters on time. I hope everyone can support me. Please join the bookshelf. Requesting recommended tickets. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Girls Becoming Mothers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Girls Becoming Mothers. When Gu Liubai woke up again, everything she saw surprised her. On the earthen walls, wooden beams, and smoky black walls, there are spider cocoons. These scenes, which were only seen in TV dramas, are truly reflected in her pupils. Gu Liubai reached out and pinched himself. It hurts so much. It's not a dream. Where are you? Did you also catch up with a fashion trend and travel through time? Ding. The reverse marriage system has been launched. Strange sounds came from Gu Liubai's mind. System. What is that thing? Hello host, in your original world, you have lost your vital signs. Given your strong desire for survival, you can draw energy from the small world. Based on the principle of equivalent exchange, the system will provide you with assistance in reversing time by 1 hour. Go back 1 hour in time. If that's the case, wouldn't she have to die? Yes, what a tempting offer. She seems to have no reason not to agree. But if something goes wrong, there must be a demon. Since time can be controlled, the system must have a great impact on her. What are your conditions? Host, this system is a reverse marriage system. As the name suggests, it requires the host to destroy unhappy marriages. Fortunately, she patted her chest. She may not be able to tie the red thread, but is this how to remove the red thread? Maybe you can give it a try. Mom, have you woken up? Are you feeling better now? The girl's voice outside the door was like the ding-dong of spring water. No matter how beautiful the voice of the young girl outside the door is, this mother's voice is like a bolt from the blue, only calling Gu Liubai lays one with an outer focus and inner tenderness. She was a youthful girl who, overnight, transformed into an old lady. This. How can this forget it? I can tolerate it. In order to survive, it's okay to endure it. That. Daughter. Wait. Don't come in yet. Gu Liubai suddenly spoke out, forgiving her momentary acceptance of incompetence. It was really a waste of having multiple daughters, and her thoughts couldn't turn. After doing a lot of psychological construction for herself, she finally recognized reality. However, before that, she also needs to contact the system. System, come out here. Gu Liubai called out quietly, and all she could hear was her short breathing. Can't you be deceived? The previous second was still there, why did it disappear in the next second? Countless bad thoughts flashed through Gu Liubai's mind. It seems that we can only take one step at a time now. Come on in, Mom's body is fine now. The rusty hinges creaked, and the wooden door was slowly pushed open from outside. A girl crossed the threshold and sat by Gu Liubai's bed holding a bowl of water. Mom, drink some water. The girl helped Gu Liubai sit up and delivered the water to her hand. Gu Liubai took a small sip and calmly looked at the girl in front of her. Her skin may not be fair, but it excels in her delicate facial features. Judging from her fair skin hidden under her collar, her dark face should have been sunburned during work. When handing her water, there were many scars on her arm, which suggests that the girl is quite capable of enduring hardship. Judging from appearance, he is not very old, probably around 13 or 14 years old. She did not fully inherit the memory of the original owner, and the images in her mind were intermittent, like an incomplete melody, only able to extract valuable things from limited memory. In other words, she came here without any knowledge, not even knowing who the target audience was. Is it the original owner? Still the girl in front of me. Mom, don't be angry with Dad. That person. I'll just get married if it's a big deal. Although the girl said so, her fingers nervously stirred together, revealing helplessness towards the situation and a fragile desire to resist but unable to refute. Anyone can tell that the girl's words are insincere. The opportunity to be sent over may be to ask her to help the girl in front of me. Don't worry, Mom said you can't get married. Listen to Mom. My daughter is so beautiful, how could Mom be willing to marry you now? Gu Liubai reached out and touched the girl's head, comforting her. But the girl hesitated. Dad. He definitely wouldn't agree. His mind is full of wanting to marry me out now. The girl's face flashed with panic as she involuntarily approached Gu Liubai, as if trying to find silk power from her. Gu Liubai chuckled lightly and widened his eyes. He dares. If he dares to marry you off, I won't let him live well. This sentence calmed the girl's heart and her tense state gradually relaxed, even the smile on her face became more sincere. Well, I'll listen to the damn thing. The girl hugged Gu Liubai and rubbed against her body, like a soft and cute kitten, coquettish and clingy. The girl's hair rubbed against her skin, making her itch uncontrollably, and she couldn't help but laugh out loud. An untimely scolding came from outside the door. Gu Fun. Don't lie dead in bed when you wake up. Follow me to the Liu family and take care of Mingrong's marriage. Who is this person? Such a bad attitude. She had just been sent to this place where birds don't poop, and was forced to accept herself as the mother of the girl in front of her a minute ago. My mood was already not good, and the man outside the door spoke particularly harshly, just stepping on Gu Liubai's gun. She stood up from the bed and rushed to the door. What are you talking about? You have the guts to say it again. How old is Mingrong? You want to marry yourself. I tell you, I won't let Mingrong marry. Marry. Turning her head to look at Mingrong behind her, the girl quickly added, Liu Bingsheng. That's right. I can't let Mingrong marry Liu Bingsheng, you just die of this heart. The man looked at Gu Liubai, who suddenly became angry in front of him, and couldn't contain his anger. Gu Fun. You have become bolder today, haven't you? How dare you refute me? I am the head of the family, and whatever I say is what I say. Leaving behind Gu Liubai, he grabbed Mingrong and was about to leave. How could Gu Liubai possibly let a man succeed? Don't pounce on him like fate, clench your fists, and hammer him hard. Let go. I want you to let go. The man felt pain and turned around, glaring fiercely at Gu Liubai. Gu Fun. Are you crazy? I'm your man, how dare you hit me? Man. Gu Liubai sneered, do you still look like a man? What kind of thing is Liu Bingsheng? Does he deserve our Mingrong? You're just a beast. No, you're not even a beast. The man trembled with anger from Gu Liubai's sharp mouth and shouted loudly, it's the opposite. Gu Fun, how come I never realized you were a shrew? Look at you, there's no way you still had the gentle and considerate appearance you used to have. I'm really blind. I married you, this poisonous woman. And even gave birth to Mingrong, this loser. The two argued incessantly, with Mingrong's deep sobs mixed in between. Dad, I'm not going. I don't want to get married, Dad. Ming Rong's voice was extremely mournful. The man continued to tug and hold on, and Gu Liubai saw that his strength was weaker. He turned around and took out a machete from the door. I tell you, if you dare to take Ming Rong out of this courtyard today. Gu Liubai's eyes turned red as he looked at Li Jinfu with a fierce expression. She swung a round machete and struck the door panel behind her, causing the worn-out wooden door to split into pieces. This door is your fate. Anger was vented, and the anger in your eyes dissipated in an instant. Staring contemptuously at the man below the steps, who was shorter than her, she took advantage of their attention being focused on the sawdust on the ground and hit her trembling right hand behind her. She didn't expect this body to be so strong. I just want to use my brute force to intimidate the opponent, but I don't know if it's worth hurting the enemy by 1,000 or self-harming by 800. Fortunately, the man was afraid and his eyes furrowed. Although there was still anger in Gu Liubai's eyes, there was no previous rude and unreasonable energy in it. Gu Liubai stepped forward and grabbed Ming Rong, letting her stand behind him. The machete in his hand shone with cold light, and the blade was aimed at the tip of the man's nose. The enemy was strong and I was strong, and the two of them were deadlocked in the yard. In the end, the man was defeated. Hanging his head down, he walked away cursing. Gu Liubai breathed a sigh of relief. She threw down her machete and touched her heart, only to find that the heart under her palm was pounding rapidly. When the tip of the knife was aimed at the man, she was very nervous. When she looked closely, she could still find her arm trembling slightly imperceptibly. This tension comes from the iron tools in hand and the reverence for life. I dare not dwell on the ifs that once flashed through her mind. Walking into the room with Ming Rong, I found her lips green and white, her body trembling, and a layer of cold sweat on her forehead. Gu Liubai whispered, "Did Mom scare you just now?" Ming Rong lifted his head and a faint smile appeared on his pale face. "No, Mom, I'm fine." He said the words were spoken like this, but it was clear that she gritted her teeth and her trembling body still did not relax. "Don't be afraid." Gu Liubai reached out and hugged Ming Rong. She saw that the original owner's marriage was also unhappy. Whether the main target of the system is the original owner or Li Mingrong, she cannot just be a spectator. Mom said she would protect you, trust Mom. Gu Liubai spoke the most powerful content in the shortest possible words. Ming Ronghui hugged her and leaned down on her shoulder, saying, "Mom, when you were holding the knife, I was very scared, and I was also very afraid that Dad would really take me away. Mom, I don't want to get married, I don't want to marry Lu Bingsheng." I could feel a stream of heat passing through her clothes and landing on her shoulder. She gently caressed Mingrong's back and said, "If you don't get married, Mom will protect you. No one can force you to get married, not even your dad." Supporting Mingrong's shoulders, Gu Liubai wiped away her tears and said, "Don't be afraid, Mom is here." He then straightened the hair stuck to her face and said, "Stop crying. If your eyes are swollen from crying, they won't look good. Go wash your face and take a good rest. As for other things, Mom has her own plans." Mingrong nodded obediently, got up and went to the kitchen to fetch water to wash his face, then lay next to Gu Liubai. Listening to the steady breathing in his ears, Gu Liubai opened his eyes and looked at the wooden beam above his head. After thinking for a while, he tiptoed out of the room. "I just focused on arguing with a man and haven't observed this place carefully yet. There are a total of 5 rooms, and apart from the kitchen and main house, all 3 bedrooms have traces of living experience. From some details, the room connected to the kitchen has been updated." She also flipped through the textbook in Mingrong's room and sensed from the lines that the current environment was somewhat reminiscent of the 1980s in her previous life. Not only that, she also found the household registration book of this family. The handwriting is very messy, but it contains a lot of content. For example, the place she currently lives in is called Pingquan Village, and the man's name is Li Jinfu. The original owner was not a local, but an educated youth who came to the countryside. After marrying Li Jinfu, she chose to stay here. As for the biological parents of the original owner, they were not mentioned in the household registration book. She calculated from this that the original owner's age was actually not large. He had just celebrated his 31st birthday, and if placed in a previous life, perhaps he had just entered the realm of marriage. My daughter Li Mingrong, this is not far from what she inferred. It's just a little strange to Gu Liubai. She searched for half a day on herself and then flipped through the other 2 bedrooms, even digging out mouse holes, but couldn't find a penny from them. This result is beyond Gu Liubai's expectations. In this era, every household's money is only hidden in a hidden place at home, without the concept of depositing money into a bank. Where will the money from this family go? Can you say? It's the room where she just woke up. Thinking of Li Mingrong sleeping soundly in bed now, she shook her head. Anyway, I'm not in a hurry for this moment. I can always find opportunities in the future. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Girls Becoming Mothers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Girls becoming mothers. When Li Mingrong woke up from bed, it was getting late and the mountains were stained with ink, drawing a faint and hazy outline. Mom. I'm in the yard. Gu Liubai was sitting under a kerosene lamp peeling peas, and the green beans were tinged with a faint yellow hue on her fingertips. After searching in the kitchen for a while, I found a bowl of peas and 2 cucumbers. From passing through to now, I only took a sip of water, but my stomach is really a bit hungry. Mom, hasn't Dad come back yet? Li Mingrong looked around, and except for a lamp in the yard, the other rooms were pitch black. Gu Liubai dropped the pea shell in his hand and patted his hands, saying, "It's better if he doesn't come back. We'll eat our food so we don't lose our appetite." Standing up with a kerosene lamp in one hand and a bean in the other, Li Mingrong walked into the kitchen. Seeing Li Mingrong still standing thoughtfully in the yard, he quickly shouted, "Come in and set fire to Mom." Gu Liubai would not admit that she is at a loss for rural firewood stoves. A plate of stir-fried peas, a plate of mixed cucumbers, and 2 more pancakes were the simple meals she had come to this world with. This place has no internet, no entertainment programs, and even electricity is a luxury item. In the scorching summer weather, the heat had not dissipated and the room was stuffy. Gu Liubai sat in the yard, looking up at the stars in the sky. The azure sky, like the color of the deep sea, is dotted with starlight, which is a scenery that was extremely difficult to see in previous lives. Mingrong, Mom had an argument with your dad today, and you also saw it. If Mom wanted to take you out of here, would you go with Mom? In the darkness, Li Mingrong looked a little flustered and said, "Mom, what does it mean to leave with me? Where can we go? Mom, don't abandon me." Take a few quick steps and squat in front of Gu Liubai, like an abandoned little dog. Of course Mom won't abandon you, don't be afraid, Gu Liubai caressed her head. Li Mingrong, this child, felt very insecure. It's been years since Mom married your father and hasn't seen your grandparents. Mom wants to take you to see them together. This is of course an excuse from Gu Liubai. She did not find any information related to the original owner's parents in this home. I'm just trying to find a reasonable excuse to put Li Mingrong off. In the afternoon, Gu Liubai specifically went out for a walk, mainly to learn about the character of Lu Bingsheng. If you don't inquire or know, you'll be startled when asked. This Lu Bingsheng can be called the era version of Njiahe. Not to mention having a hot temper, even if it doesn't go well, I like domestic violence. Although the deaths of my first 2 wives were not directly related to domestic violence, they didn't live long. Even the previous wife had 2 lives when she gave birth, and as for the details, no one can explain them clearly. But this all indicates that Li Mingrong cannot marry Lu Bingsheng. The matter of domestic violence has arisen repeatedly, and all the promises made beforehand are pale and powerless in the face of facts. Lu Bingsheng's family is considered a wealthy household in Pingquan village. His father, Lu Guohua, often engages in opportunistic activities while eating big meals. In less than 5 or 6 years of reform, there has been a significant gap compared to others. Now, in order to marry Lu Bingsheng with a generous dowry as a condition, many families who did not take their daughters seriously have been swayed by their own thoughts. This includes Li Jinfu. Gu Liubai thought to herself, no wonder when she wore it, the original owner was lying in bed. I think it was all because of Li Jinfu's anger. To put it bluntly, Li Jinfu's inherent inferiority made him never look up to women. Gu Liubai has been thinking for a long time, and whenever it comes to Li Mingrong, one can feel the hidden palpitations and reluctance in this body, which are residual thoughts of the original owner. She wants to divorce and take Li Mingrong with her, and this matter must be done slowly. In this era, divorce is a fantasy, and undoubtedly her every move will be treated as an anomaly in this barren mountain village. She is not afraid, but she hopes that the harm to Li Mingrong will be minimized so that in the future, Li Mingrong can obtain true happiness that belongs to her. Actually, there's one more thing, she doesn't have any money on her. It is said that a single penny cannot defeat a hero, let alone her 2 women, Li Mingrong, who left Pingquan village without any savings, making it difficult for them to move forward. A crescent moon slowly rose from the treetops to the top of the head, and the heat of the day had dissipated. The cool breeze blew with gusts of chill. Mingrong, it's getting late too. Let's go rest. What about you, Mom? Li Mingrong looked at Gu Liubai, who was yawning on the side, and said with concern. Mom, sit down for a while longer and go to bed right away. Listening to the increasingly distant footsteps, Gu Liubai closed his eyes. What happened on this day was so sudden that she was caught off guard and a bit excited. Everything is like a dream. Just as he was about to stand up from the lounge chair, Li Jinfu wobbled open the courtyard door and walked in. A strong smell of alcohol permeated the air, and Gu Liubai lowered her head to prevent the other party from seeing her disgusted eyes. Gu Fun, come over to me. Li Jinfu's face, full of mischievous eyebrows and eyes, carried a hint of petty success. Seeing Gu Liubai unmoved, he stepped forward and punched her, cursing and saying, I tell you, I have already agreed with the Lu family that the 5th day of next month is a good day. Even if she doesn't want to get married, she must get married. If you dare to make a fool of me, I will kill you. A murky breath sprayed onto her face, struggling to get up, but Li Jinfu grabbed her neck and couldn't resist. Looking up at the person in front of me coldly, I couldn't help but feel disgusted. How could there be such a disgusting person in this world? The anger in my heart is soaring, intermittently mixed with a sense of sadness. Feeling unworthy of the original owner. She finally understood that Li Mingrong's body was bound by evil fate, and the original owner's body was also bound by it. Although I really don't want to admit that there is still a gap between her and Li Jinfu in terms of military strength. The other party suppressed her without any strength to resist. However, this does not mean that she will compromise on this matter. In a direct confrontation, she will inevitably lose, so she will come to hell. Staring at Li Jinfu's back, watching him shake his head as he enters the room behind the kitchen, humming an unknown tune. Touching the tip of my nose, I found that besides the smell of alcohol on Li Jinfu's body, there was also a faint fragrance that tasted like September osmanthus, rich and sweet. Did it come from the Lu family? At midnight, everything was silent. Gu Liubai placed his machete by the door and pushed open the room where Li Jinfu lived. Snoring like thunder, the other person occasionally smacks their lips. Li Jinfu, Li Jinfu. She deliberately lowered her voice, pinched her throat, and made her voice sound like a fierce ghost. Li Jinfu, wake up. He reached out and pushed him lying in bed. Damn it, who's calling me lousy? Li Jinfu half opened his eyes in a daze, startled by the scene in front of him. On his black face, his bright red lips were bloodthirsty. The kerosene lamp lit up from behind, the candle flickered, and there was a hint of eerie blue in the orange hue. Jinfu, get up and take some medicine. Gu Liubai saw Li Jinfu wake up, and his expressionless face changed in an instant. He looked at him with a sly smile on his face, with a sinister tone that even changed his tone of voice. It was as rough as the sound of nails rubbing against the floor. Obey, drink medicine. She held a bowl of water mixed with potash, and the surface of the water was coated with a cold light by the moonlight, making the black bowl of water even darker. Li Jinfu was so scared that he jumped out of bed and hurriedly wanted to jump out of the window to escape. He found that the wooden window had been nailed to death from inside at an unknown time. Don't. Please, I don't want to drink. Li Jinfu knelt on the ground, crying bitterly, his lower body shivering cold, and the sound haunting him, penetrating every inch. Li Jinfu, why are you so disobedient? Gu Liubai burst into laughter and threw the rough pottery bowl in his hand to the ground, bending down to pick up one of them. If you don't drink the medicine, then take this. She was both threatening and threatening. No, it will. It will kill. Li Jinfu watched as the other party approached her little by little, and crawled away from the side with a stream of urine. Go away. Don't come over. Move away. Gu Liubai turned a deaf ear and walked up to him with a swaying posture. He lifted his face with fragments of a rough pottery bowl and looked straight into his eyes, saying, Li Jinfu, if you don't want to die, just be obedient. I am obedient, I am very obedient. He then realized that the blackened face belonged to Gu Fun. The fear in his heart did not decrease, but instead rose. From any perspective, Gu Fun in front of him was not like the Gu Fun he knew. Gu Fun, whom he knew, was as timid as a mouse and worshipped him as the heavens. Unlike now, the face he had seen enough of seemed strangely like a ghost in the mountains, and even his walking posture looked much lighter. Trembling, he whispered, Gu. Gu Fun, Gu Fun. No one answered him, only Gu Liubai's sharp smile. However, the next second, he watched in horror as Gu Fun stuffed the half-piece of rough pottery into her mouth, and blood flowed down the corner of her mouth, emitting a strange aura. Li Jinfu, remember, Li Mingrong's marriage will never end, and I will never let you go. The piercing laughter began again, echoing in the small room. I'll be looking for you again. I will find you. Gu Fun left, and Li Jinfu's timidity faded. His whole body emitted a foul odor, and a layer of white sweat came out from his back. His vest was cool and pressed against his body. He leaned against the bed, his heart racing with twists and turns. Should he go to the Liu family to get married? After all, that's a demon. However, upon second thought, the Liu family had given a large sum of money. After working hard for several years, it was not certain that they could reach this number. After much consideration, a pair of mouse eyes shone brightly. Money strengthens the courage of the poor. However, he still fears the evil spirits tonight. It seems that during this period, he must stabilize Gu Fun well. Spat a mouthful of phlegm on the ground. Damn it. It's all Gu Fun, this poisonous woman, who is causing him some trouble. Even if he's possessed by a ghost, he doesn't know. If it weren't for his concern about just getting engaged to the Liu family, he would definitely send Gu Fun to the Taoist temple. The more I thought about it, the more angry I became. I cursed inwardly. When I quietly married Li Mingrong, let's see how he would deal with her. After everything was decided, he realized that his neck was slightly tingling. He reached out to wipe it, and the crimson blood soaked his fingertips. My pupils contracted slightly, and I couldn't react to the blood on my hands. After a while, I trembled and rubbed the blood away. My mouth was filled with profanity, as if it could eradicate the fear in my heart. Outside the window, Gu Liubai looked at his twisted face and sneered to himself. She knew that dogs can't change how they eat shit. For the sake of money, Li Jinfu can even sell his daughter. This time, pretending to be a ghost is not enough to satisfy his greed, but tonight's goal has been achieved. I was just trying to scare the other person. Leaving is not something that can be easily done. The time I bought was just enough for her to take a break. But if you dare to attack her again afterwards, you can still remember tonight's nightmare. Take out a few wild raspberries from your pocket and throw them into your mouth. Perhaps next time, you can let the other person try her other tricks. No CP, hurry up and write. Don't miss it when you pass by the female lead is rolling around, asking for collection, asking for tickets, and asking for comments. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Girls Becoming Mothers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 5. Girls Becoming Mothers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Girls Becoming Mothers. The middle-aged man's tears sparkled as he stepped forward to hold on to Gu Liubai, who was limp. He murmured, "Daughter, it's Dad. Dad came to see you." Looking at Gu Liubai's tattered and patched clothes, he cried out in a mournful voice, "My daughter, you have suffered. Dad should have come to pick you up earlier, it's Dad who's not good. Go back." Gu Liubai's face was still filled with tears and a bewildered expression. "Dad, this is my house. Aren't you and Mom here to come and see me?" The woman sneered, "Yes, look at you. Look at how you're doing. If I had known you had suffered so much, I wouldn't have let you marry here with nothing. Look at your face, it looks like an old lady." Gu Liubai's eyes were filled with anger as he looked at the woman angrily. "You go. I don't mind you coming to see me." As he spoke, he was about to push the woman out of the hospital. "It's against you. How could I have raised such an ungrateful thing as you? I don't deserve to return to the city to enjoy peace and fortune just because I see you like this." The woman twisted her waist and left angrily, while the middle-aged man behind helplessly shouted, "Warner, let's not make a fuss. Business is important." After speaking, he turned his head to look at Gu Liubai and said, "Daughter, your mother and I are here today to pick you up and take you back to the city. Additionally, we want you to divorce Li Jinfu." The man said earnestly, "Originally, when you went to the countryside as an educated youth and said you wanted to get married in the countryside, your mother and I didn't agree. Now our lives are getting better and better day by day. I'll listen to my father and divorce Li Jinfu. Let's go home." Gu Liubai refused completely. "No, Dad, I don't want to divorce Li Jinfu." With teary eyes, he fully played the role of a deeply loving husband. "Besides, I have a daughter and I can't leave her. You and Mom should just die with this heart," she said firmly, as Yu Guang glanced at the man who had brought the couple to the back of the mountain, his eyes dimly lit up. "The chess pieces are in place, now waiting for Li Jinfu to take the bait." Sure enough, not long after, a rustling sound came from outside the yard. Gu Liubai gave the man a glance, and the noisy noise in the yard suddenly stopped. "Daughter, don't argue with your mother, come out with your father." The man's voice was not loud, but it happened to be heard by people outside the room. The two of them pushed open the courtyard door and did not see Li Jinfu outside. After looking at each other, the man said in a deep voice, "Xiaofan, Dad hopes you can think about it. There are 2 commercial houses in our city, and selling one of them will be enough for you to live in the countryside for a lifetime. Besides, your mother and I still have more than 30,000 yuan in savings. As long as you come home with us, these are all yours. Listen to Dad, is Li Jinfu worth your guard for? Dad, I understand everything you say, but I can't bear to part with brother Jinfu, I don't want to leave him." Gu Liubai hesitated for a moment and directly refused the middle-aged man. The sound echoed leisurely to Li Jinfu, who was squatting by the fence on the other side. A smug expression couldn't help but appear on his face. "Look. How powerful he is to make a woman love him so much. But as soon as I thought about Gufan's family's wealth, my heart felt like a cat paw scratching again, tickling my heart and lungs. I wished I could rush to Gu Liubai's face, grab her shoulder, and shake her up. Promise quickly. Why not agree? So much money is enough for him to spend his whole life. Why bother digging and eating in this mud? He can't earn much money even if he works hard. Xiao Fun, let me be honest with you. Your brother found out he can't have children anymore. Your mother and I may be counting on you to have grandchildren in our lifetime. The man covered his face, seemingly unwilling to show his vulnerability. So you want me and Jinfu to divorce, so we can go back to the city and find a son-in-law to come to our doorstep, right? After speaking, he leaned slightly outward. Yes, the man took his hand and said, Funner, I beg you, as long as you give birth to a seedling for our family, you will be the great hero of the Gu family. But I've been married to brother Jinfu for so many years, and I really can't bear to part with him. And it's okay to let brother Jinfu enter our family. As soon as he finished speaking, Gu Liubai quickly turned around to look at Li Jinfu before he could react. On the face that made her nauseous, she saw a hint of joy. This statement hit Li Jinfu's heart. Yes. He can be redundant, at most let Gu Fun give birth to a few more, as long as one of the surnames is Gu Bu. No way, the man said firmly. Gu Liubai is waiting for this sentence. Based on her understanding of Li Jinfu these past 2 days, whenever possible, he will definitely exhaust all means as long as he can extract money. So, when certain words come out of one's own mouth and he hears them secretly, the effect between the two is vastly different. She just wanted to escape here, so she found someone to accompany her and staged a divorce scene. Why? For no reason. If I say no, then no. The man couldn't refuse, as if he meant whatever he said. Then I won't go back to the city, anyway I didn't want to go. Gu Liubai shouted loudly, turning his head and rushing back to the room. As he left, he quickly glanced at the position where Li Jinfu was squatting. She is familiar with the matter of inviting June to enter the jar, but she also needs to pay attention to the favorable timing, location, and people. Now that the timing and location are in place, it depends on whether Li Jinfu can enter the jar. If you don't reply, then don't reply. It's ridiculous. Do you think there's nothing we can do except for you? The man stood outside the yard and shouted loudly towards the door, You're wrong, Gu Fun. Our Gu family has a big business, and some people are rushing towards us. The man was also angered by Gu Liubai's words, and angrily pushed open the wooden fence, pulling the hand of the middle-aged woman and about to walk out. Let's go back to the city and pretend we don't have this daughter. Li Jinfu, who was hiding in the dark, quietly stood up and their conversation fell into his ears without a word. The confident and fearless demeanor of Gu Fun's parents clearly indicates that there is still a way out. Do I really want to watch them leave and see the Gu family's property leave him? No way. It's Gu Fun's, after calculation, what's the difference between him and him? Why give away 2 sets of commercial housing and tens of thousands of yuan to others for free? It's not a big deal to fake divorce Gu Fun first. Gu Fun loves him so much and is foolish. Just coax him and wait for the money to come into Gu Fun's hands before remarriage. That money will come into his hands. Or maybe he tricked the money into not remarrying Gu Fun, afraid of not finding a wife even if he had money, and married a beautiful woman. Gu Fun, this yellow-faced woman, where to stay cool. Thinking about the future, he will live in high-rise buildings in the city, lying in a pile of money. He can even wake up with a smile when he falls asleep. After thinking about it, he quickly stood at the door and stopped, with a smile on his face. Dad, Mom, why are you here? Come in and sit in the room first. He stretched his neck and shouted into the room, Gu Fun. Gu Fun. Mom and Dad are here, please treat us. No one returned to him, the room was quiet. Mom and Dad, Xiaofan is not sensible. Don't have the same opinion as her. Come in and sit inside. Who are you? What kind of big garlic are you filling here? The middle-aged woman tilted her eyes and watched as Li Jinfu leaned closer and closer. She quickly took a few steps back and covered her nose, saying, "Everything is coming towards me, hurry up. The stinky sweat all over me is suffocating me." Li Jinfu felt a bit embarrassed as he looked at the woman with a gloomy expression. However, for the sake of money in a house, he gritted his teeth and restrained himself, still smiling. "Dad, Mom, I am Xiaofan's husband. Li Jinfu, this should be our first time meeting. Rural people are a bit outnumbered than urban people." The woman turned her head to the man and said, "Let's go, aren't we going back? I really can't stay here for a moment. Take a look at the poor little one, give it a collection." End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Girls Becoming Mothers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Girls Becoming Mothers. The middle-aged man didn't speak, instead Li Jinfu kept talking non-stop. It seems that a certain sentence moved the man. He grabbed the woman and said, "It's the big sun now, let's go inside and sit down." The woman's sharp and sarcastic face was full of resistance, but she still obediently entered the room. Glancing at this dirt house at the end of my eyes, I pouted and looked down upon it. "You sit down, I'll pour you 2 cups of tea first." Li Jinfu bent over and almost confessed the two of them. The more a middle-aged woman works, the greater the growing desire in her heart. "No need." The woman said coolly, "The water pumped out of the well is so dirty that it can't be drunk." She gave a glance to the middle-aged man next to her. The other person clearly took out a can from their bag, twisted it open, and handed it to her. The sweet aroma of yellow peaches permeates the air, making people drool. How much should canned food in glass bottles cost? The golden ring on the woman's hand also made Li Jinfu very tempted. "You are indeed an ignorant country bumpkin." The woman raised her tail finger and sneered contemptuously. Li Jinfu had no face or skin, and at this moment he felt his face hot. His movements in his hands stiffened, and his smile seemed even more fake. He turned his back and secretly swore that as long as he got the house and money, he would make those two. No, the 3 of them looked good. Li Jinfu compared himself to Han Xian and pondered inwardly, it's not too late for a gentleman to seek revenge in 10 years. "Mom and Dad, sit down and I'll go call Xiaofan out. After all, you're here. How could you not come out to entertain us?" The middle-aged man held the cup, with a smile on his face, but the disgust in his eyes betrayed him. "He also thinks this water is very dirty." Li Jinfu turned around, the smile on his face instantly disappeared, and he let out a soft snort from his nose. "Gu Fun, wait for me. I have suffered humiliation today, and I will have you repay me in the future." Pushing open the door, Li Jinfu changed his face again and smiled like a chrysanthemum. "Xiaofan, your parents are here. Why are you still hiding inside and not going out? Be obedient, go and say hello to them." Gu Liubai shook off the hand that Li Jinfu had placed on her shoulder, enduring impatience. At this point, how could she allow her plan to fail? "Brother Jinfu, don't you feel aggrieved when they say that to you?" He casually carried Li Jinfu's body in his palm, which disgusted her to death. "But I apologize for you. Why do they say that to you?" Li Jinfu suppressed his emotions all morning and was struck by Gu Liubai's words. That's it. He's almost succumbing to death, feeling like a bitter gourd in his heart. "Back then, you didn't like me, and your daughter still married me. How could that be?" Li Jinfu shook his head and said, "These are all things I should suffer. Who made me marry you? This is what I should suffer." Compared to insincerity, Li Jinfu's acting skills may be even better. "Gu Fun, don't argue with your parents. They are also getting older. As younger generations, let's just follow the flow in everything." But you don't even know. My parents asked me to divorce you, Brother Jinfu. I don't want to leave you." Gu Liubai shed 2 crocodile tears in time. This made Li Jinfu's heart swell. A woman who loves him wholeheartedly and is willing to give up a large amount of wealth, how can she not make people full of confidence? Look! How charming Li Jinfu is. Gu Fun, I've heard your conversation with Dad, and I don't want to divorce you, but I hope you live well, Li Jinfu said passionately, occasionally choking up and saying, I really can't make you live a good life in my life. Gu Fun, listen to my parents and divorce me. Gu Liubai suddenly pushed Li Jinfu away and scolded, Li Jinfu, how could you do this? They just have a few stinky money, isn't it remarkable? I'm not rare. Or. She glanced at her askance and said, you're just a greedy person for wealth. The more she said this, the more it tickled Li Jinfu's heart. Where are a few stinky money? That's the god of wealth. I originally had a slight suspicion about the 2 people inside the house, why didn't they come early or late, but just when I felt that Gu Fun had changed a bit, I came. But Gu Fun never showed any intention to leave from beginning to end. Instead, she spoke passionately and completely dispelled his concerns by saying that she didn't want to leave her. At this moment, Gu Liubai poked his mind again, but he couldn't admit it. He quickly defended himself, feeling very excited. What you said is really unfair to me. Think about it, it's you who leads a good life. I don't think I'm useless, that's why I wanted to let go. Gu Fun, I can't even hold on to you when I know you can lead a good life. Don't worry, even if I divorce you, I will definitely follow you wherever you go, never give up. Li Jinfu was extremely sincere at the moment, his eyes filled with a desire for money. Really? Where am I going, where are you going to? Really? It's absolutely true. Li Jinfu raised his finger and swore to the sky, to show that his words were true. Okay, I'm divorcing you, but brother Jinfu, if I divorce you, my parents will definitely take me on a blind date. So. I definitely don't want to, so I want to take Mingrong with me. Gu Liubai saw that Li Jinfu was about to jump back and quickly pulled him down on the edge of the bed. Jinfu Gu, do you think so? I didn't want to divorce you at all, even though you're doing it for my own good, I can't really marry anyone else, can I? She stared at Li Jinfu with a posture that if he dared to nod, she would pounce and bite him to death. In this situation, Li Jinfu couldn't nod and could only grit his head and smile, yes, I definitely don't want to see you marry someone else. So, Mingrong didn't just fill this gap. If my parents let me get married, I'll pull Mingrong out. After a long time, my parents will definitely understand us, besides, Mingrong's blood is flowing from both of us. If she could find someone rich in the city, wouldn't you, as a father, also be able to enjoy pure happiness? Brother Jinfu, do you think what I'm saying is reasonable? This is the crucial moment when playing chess. Gu Liubai had laid so much groundwork in front of him, but in fact, it was all just a false shot. The real purpose was to take Li Mingrong back with him. In reason. Li Jinfu nodded incessantly. He really didn't expect this. But it can be a good solution. Gu Fun was still worried that he was with him now, but if we see the colorful world outside in the future, we can't say for sure. But Mingrong is different. If she is her father, then isn't it just what he says? As for the Liu family, no matter how high the dowry money is given, can it still allow him to live a good life in the city? Divorce. This marriage must be terminated. The more Li Jinfu thought about it, the more unbearable his heart became. Like a cat scratching, he wished he could immediately pack his bags and go to the city to enjoy Li Mingrong's tranquility. Gu Liubai saw that Li Jinfu had taken the bait, so he decided to strike while the iron was hot and said, Brother Jinfu, how much money do we have at the moment? You give me everything. What do you want money for? As soon as he mentioned money, Li Jinfu became instantly alert. Jinfu, where did you think? I asked for money, wasn't it for you? Gu Liubai whispered, you see, you've seen my parents like that too. They don't like you, so I have to use money to please them first. This way, when we remarry, they won't be able to object to anything anymore. Or rather, you don't even want to remarry me. Gu Liubai saw a hint of hesitation on Li Jinfu's face, and his expression trembled. His smiling face suddenly collapsed, as black as cigarette ash at the bottom of a pot. Okay. Li Jinfu, I didn't know you were still harboring adultery in your heart. I tell you, I won't divorce you for this marriage. Gu Fun. Xiao Fun, listen to me. Things have come to this point, how could Li Jinfu see his efforts fall short? He quickly covered Gu Liubai's mouth, shouting and shouting, how could it be? Give it to you, who said not to give it to you? If Gu Fun doesn't divorce him, how can he still go to the city to enjoy peace and fortune? Reluctant to let go of the child and unable to catch the wolf, he gritted his teeth, gritted his heart, nodded and said yes. Gu Liubai saw that Li Jinfu had loosened up and was afraid of long dreams at night. So he took the initiative and said in a tone that he couldn't refuse, then you give it to me now. Okay. How dare he offend Gu Liubai now that he hasn't had time to coax her? I could only casually take off a cloth bag from my body and slowly swallow the money. Giving money is like cutting meat, he feels heartbroken. Gu Liubai saw it and pulled it over, pinching it from an angle that Li Jinfu couldn't see. It's quite thick, it seems that Li Jinfu can quite accumulate it. Brother Jinfu, think about it. What else do you want from me? Mine is yours. Gu Liubai put the money in his pocket and gave him a comforting expression. Jinfu Gu, wait for me. I'll go to the city first to stabilize myself, and then immediately arrange for you to live in a big house in the city. Hey, good. Good. Li Jinfu was completely brainwashed by Gu Liubai and forgot about the pain of cutting meat. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Girls Becoming Mothers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Girls becoming mothers. With the money in hand, Gu Liubai felt a sense of joy in her heart, but her face couldn't show any signs of weakness. She muttered, Brother Jinfu, I really can't bear to part with you. In fact, she felt very displeased in her heart. I'm not willing to let you go either, but as long as you live well, I'm willing. The two of them came and went, sweet words like money, spewing out in piles. But it has to be said that the honeymoon offensive has been very effective. I thought divorcing Li Jinfu would drag on for 2 or 3 days, but in the afternoon, he took Gu Liubai to the village secretary to handle the procedures. Indeed, wealth moves people's hearts. The two officially registered for divorce, and Gu Liubai and Li Mingrong established a new household. She held a light proof in her arms and looked at the green mountains and waters before her. I have been in this world for almost a week now, and finally, I want to say goodbye to this place. On the green train, the distant mountains recede in front of her, and she will lead Li Mingrong to a new life. Mom, where are my grandparents? Why didn't I see them as soon as I got on the train? Li Mingrong was puzzled. Even to be honest, she was still very confused. Her parents said they would divorce, her mother said they would leave, and her father didn't even bother to keep her. Instead, they happily bid them farewell. This is too abnormal. That's not your grandparents, Gu Liubai responded with a relaxed tone. No. Li Mingrong widened his eyes and looked incredulous. How could it not be? So, who are they all? No matter how hard Li Mingrong thought, he couldn't figure it out. The couple was specially hired by Gu Liubai just to perform a scene for Li Jinfu. Guess what? Gu Liubai left Li Mingrong with a meaningful smile. Mingrong, you just need to remember that from now on, no one can decide your life. You can do whatever you want. This sentence in Li Mingrong's heart was like a tsunami, causing a huge uproar. Suddenly, my heart began to doubt and I looked at Gu Liubai in front of me with suspicion. A week ago, she felt that her mother was different. At first, she thought it was because her mother was going to get married and was being stimulated. But upon closer examination, no matter how much change, inherent thoughts will never change. Her mother has been assimilated into the life in the mountain village, even beginning to yield, unable to resist, let alone take her on an unknown journey. You aren't my mother, right? Although it was a question, Li Mingrong's gaze at the blank space no longer carried tenderness. With a clear mind, she was able to examine her objectively. Gu Liubai smiled sweetly and touched the end of her hair. The hair that had just been cut short with scissors was hard and pricked her palms. How could that be? She looked at Li Mingrong, her eyes still filled with disbelief. Mingrong, you are very careful and very smart. Gu Liubai nodded, suppressing the inner turmoil, which originated from this body itself. You guessed it right, I'm not really your mother. Gu Liubai didn't hide it and said directly in the local area. Your mother, what should I say? Perhaps one day she will come back to you, but for now, I will take over this body. Gu Liubai raised his eyebrows, and Li Mingrong looked at her with half a doubt, as if weighing the credibility of it. Are you afraid? Gu Liubai suddenly approached Li Mingrong and picked up her chin with one finger, making her look into his own eyes. With a hint of fear in the panicked eyes of the other party, they looked into Gu Liubai's dark and heavy pupils. I'm not afraid. She bit her lower lip, her pink color gradually turning white, and suddenly became calm. This parasite is inside the mother's body, and it is unknown whether it is a human or a ghost, although it is unclear what the other party's purpose is. But based on the current situation, it may not be a bad thing. The other party took her away from the place that constantly scared her. Since her father said he wanted her to marry Lu Bingxian, no matter where she went, there always felt a pair of eyes behind her, staring at her in the dark. She knew it wasn't her illusion, that's all, that's why she felt creepy. The train running under her made a loud and clanging sound, but it gave her an inexplicable sense of peace of mind. You are good to me, so I am not afraid. Li Mingrong said firmly. This sentence is correct. My mother is too weak, and I always feel sad for her every time I look at her. Although she doesn't want her mother to leave, she hopes her mother can get rid of the fate that has always been controlled by Li Jinfu. Gu Liubai nodded, not expecting Li Mingrong to think so. She thought that when Li Mingrong heard that she was not her mother, she would be angry and shout for her to return her mother. Touching her chest, she silently recited in her heart. Gu Fun, rest assured, your daughter is far more resilient than you imagine. Once he accepted this fact, Li Mingrong quickly recovered as usual. Although he was still a bit scared in his heart, he would lean against Gu Liubai's side. People have changed, but the smell on my mother has not changed. So, what do I call you now? Mom. Li Mingrong asked in a soft voice. Gu Liubai least wants to hear this sentence. Every word from Li Mingrong's mother reminds her of an indefensible fact. She is a young girl who has become the mother of another girl. If there are outsiders around, please call me Mom, but if it's private, please call me Little Sister. Gu Liubai said in a righteous tone. Li Mingrong chuckled and Gu Liubai pressed his mother's face against her, saying extremely contrasting words, especially the last two sentences, gritting his teeth and looking very fierce. Okay, sister, I'll call you sister. Li Mingrong joked to her, and the last hint of fear dissipated with Gu Liubai's black face. Sister, are we really going to Haishur? Are we rich? We won't be wandering on the streets, will we? And the address you gave that person was fabricated, right? Li Mingrong had many hidden problems in his heart and threw them all out at once. If you don't go to Haishur, it's just to deceive Li Jinfu, but the address is real. As for what he can't find, let's talk about it separately. The address left by Gu Liubai for Li Jinfu was originally a coordinate in her world, but the phone number was fabricated by her. Where are we going then? Go to Beijing. The relatively remote Pingquan village has better education methods and safety systems. She and Li Mingrong are both women, so it's hard to guarantee that they won't encounter any accidents. It's the big city that makes her feel more at ease. After going to Beijing, I will arrange for you to re-enroll. Also, remember that Li Jinfu from Pingquan village has no relationship with you. From now on, you are Gu Mingrong. Li Mingrong, no, Gu Mingrong, didn't feel any sadness or even joy about taking her mother's surname. She completely broke free from her original identity. The last bit of attachment to Li Jinfu as a father in my heart was completely severed along with the train on the journey. From then on, she only had a mother, and she only needed a mother. And she can still go to school, which makes her even more ecstatic. Can I really continue reading? Will you be under a lot of pressure? After all, external factors are there, and no one can ignore them. It all depends on human factors. Gu Liubai gave her a reassuring expression. Thinking and doing are two different things. Without taking action, thinking is just a vague statement. She dares to think, even more daring to do. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Girls Becoming Mothers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Girls becoming mothers. When they arrived, the train stations of later generations were far less bustling than they are today. However, when they suddenly arrived in the city from a sparsely populated mountain village, both Gu Liubai and Gu Mingrong felt a bit uncomfortable. Gu Mingrong, holding a small cloth bag, stood behind Gu Liubai with some fear as he watched the bustling crowd. Mom! Sister, where are we going now? Timidly, with a faint tremolo. Gu Liubai scanned around and stopped in front of a newspaper pavilion. Picking at the stall, pulling out the nearest newspaper, flipping through it while chatting with the uncle in the newsstand. More than 10 minutes have passed, and Gu Mingrong has been standing behind her, waiting anxiously. She is not sure, it's just a newspaper. As for chatting with the vendor for so long. The restlessness in his heart grew more and more, and when he finally reached the critical point, Gu Liubai bought a newspaper and the conversation with the vendor came to an end. Sister. Gu Mingrong squatted on the ground, looking at her pitifully, looking a bit miserable. Gu Liubai smiled and pulled her up. She was 13 years old and indeed a child. Let's go. She took the luggage from Gu Mingrong's hand. Where are we going? Gu Mingrong grabbed Gu Liubai's clothes and didn't put them away, afraid of being thrown into this unfamiliar place. Gu Liubai smiled but remained silent, nodding on the newspaper with his fingers. The dark gray newspaper exudes a scent of ink, and the place pointed out by Gu Liubai is undoubtedly a place of good and good things happening locally. Taifeng District. Yes. Gu Liubai chose this place after careful consideration after conversing with the vendor, rather than aimlessly targeting. 70% of this area is local to Beijing, and the number of outsiders is not large, but they can basically stabilize. This shows that the management of this area is relatively satisfactory and not exclusive. Another thing is that Gu Mingrong will go to school after that, so it should be more convenient here. Every family asked one by one, and finally when they reached the fifth family, an old man was willing to rent a house to them. A courtyard with a courtyard, in addition to the main house where the elderly live, there are miscellaneous items on the east side and a room available on the west side, which is perfect for the two of them to live in. During the conversation, Gu Liubai basically understood the old man's background. The old man's name is Liang Yening, and he is a high-ranking intellectual in this era. When he was young, his husband was knocked down at a conference because he violated certain principles. Afterwards, she remained alone until her husband's problems were resolved a few years ago, and she was able to live back in the former courtyard house that belonged to her and her husband. Unfortunately, things are different from people. Because of the arrival of Gu Liubai and Gu Mingrong, this long silent courtyard also became lively. At this moment, she was bending over and washing vegetables by the pool. Sister, I heard about what you asked me the day before yesterday. The old man leaned on his cane and nodded on the bluestone slab, with a worried tone in his voice. The quickest way is to go to the Women's Federation to get the certificate first, but I have heard about it. Do you think? Aunt Liang, wait a moment. Gu Liubai interrupted Mrs. Liang and handed the washed vegetables to Gu Mingrong, gesturing for her to go to the kitchen to cook. Actually, it can be considered deliberately avoiding Gu Mingrong. Perhaps she has just arrived in a strange place, and now Gu Mingrong lacks a sense of security. She is afraid that Aunt Liang will make things worse and have wild thoughts. Auntie, please continue. There was an apologetic smile on her face. Mrs. Liang looked at Gu Mingrong's innocent back and suddenly knew why Gu Liubai had done this. That's a good child. I heard that if you want to register as a registered residence, it's more difficult than going to heaven. Difficult. Then I have to do it too. Gu Liubai answered decisively, Aunt Liang, please tell me all the information you have learned. I'll give it a try first. Is that okay? Then let's try another way. Perhaps moved by Gu Liubai's persistence, Mrs. Liang didn't say anything to persuade her to quit, but instead tried her best to find a way to help her solve the problem. Carrying a few pastries, Gu Liubai knocked on the door of Wang Yu, vice chairman of the Women's Federation, in the evening. Who is it? A man poked his head and saw Gu Liubai standing at the door, letting her in. Xiaoye, I'm looking for you. The man finished speaking and stood at the door, not going in. Hello Chairman Wang, my name is Gu Fun. Gu Liubai took the opportunity to glance at the other party. The woman had a stern face, with impatience between her eyebrows and eyes, and a sense of oppression from those in power. This reminded Gu Liubai of the company's CEO Zhang. What's up? Wang Yu's tone was stiff, without any tenderness or warmth towards the people. It's like this, Gu Liubai said concisely, cutting off any attempts to get close to the other party. I've noticed that some of our women's federation's work is still not done well. Wang Yu's gaze was like a sharp arrow, staring at Gu Liubai's face and saying, Speak up, I hope you are seeking truth from facts, otherwise. The pressure in the tone is obvious. There are still some loopholes in our Women's Federation's propaganda work. We only promote the prevention and control of gynecological diseases, and only target women. Gu Liubai paused, giving the other party a space for imagination. In fact, there is scientific evidence that many physiological diseases in women are completely caused by men's lack of attention to hygiene and other factors. Gu Liubai remained silent until now and refused to speak a word. Looking at Wang Yu's thoughtful expression, she opened the pastry she had brought and said, I heard that our Women's Federation is about to change. When Chairman Wang is promoted, I hope you can come and feel happy. She smiled and scanned the clock hanging on the wall, saying, Oh my, it's getting late. I need to hurry back and cook for my daughter. Chairman Wang, then I'll leave first. As Gu Liubai stood up and passed by the man, he calmly glanced at her. After she left, a playful light flashed in the man's eyes. How do you feel? Wang Yu gently tapped the pastry brought by Gu Liubai on the table with her fingertips, and the condensation on her face disappeared. The man chuckled lightly and said, He's smart. I think it's only because I'm smart that I find it tricky. What a big deal. There was a hint of melancholy in the tone. I don't think so. The man took out a stack of paper from under his buttocks, which was exactly what Gu Liubai had not taken with him when he left just now. The above is densely packed with handwritten Junshio small characters, and it is impossible to tell that they are from the hands of a woman. Take a look. Wang Yu didn't know why, but after flipping through a few pages, the smile on her face deepened. What kind of women's propaganda is just a piece of bricks that can be used to attract attention? What we really need to say is what we are holding in our own hands. The man saw that she turned to the end and pulled out a registered residence. How do you like it? Now you still think the other side has a big plan. Without waiting for her to answer, she said with feeling, This registered residence says Pinkwan Village. Have you and I ever heard of this place before? No. It is said that the poor mountains and rivers produce unruly people, but you can't tell from their behavior that they came from the countryside. This woman may have something else to do in the future. Wang Yu turned her head and stared at the man. This was the first time she had heard such high praise for a woman from the other person's mouth. I know. Wang Yu nodded and said, actually, you're trying to point at me. Don't think I don't know your thoughts, just think my attitude is not good. You can just speak up. The man paused for a moment, and the smile on his face disappeared in an instant. He waved his hand and said, I dare not, I dare not. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Girls Becoming Mothers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Girls Becoming Mothers. 1 month later, the day before the start of school. Gu Mingrong lay in bed, looking up at the ceiling above. I thought it would be difficult to go to school, and I also thought that I would eventually be forced to give up. However, when I did, the ecstasy in my heart swept by and instead became calm. There is nothing difficult in the world, only those with a heart. She learned another trick from Gu Liubai. Come, let grandma see, what are the shortcomings? Mrs. Liang stood in front of Gu Mingrong, looking as if she was even happier than Gu Mingrong. Grandma, I just went to register first and will be back soon. After more than a month of contact, although Mrs. Liang is not their relative, she is more like a family member and always thinks for them. Okay, but I still need a backpack. When I go to school, I need to look like a student. Turning around, I took out a satin-embroidered backpack and handed it to Gu Mingrong. Under Gu Liubai's nod, Gu Mingrong took the backpack and said, Grandma, thank you. Then I'll go sign up. The two nodded and watched as Gu Mingrong left, until he could no longer be seen. What about you? What are your plans for the future? Mrs. Liang whispered, Mingrong is in school now. Shouldn't you also plan for yourself? Trembling back, Gu Liubai bent down to support her. Make money to raise children, Gu Liubai said. In the 1980s, it was the era of developing special economic zones and rapid social development. Didn't you think about finding another one? Gu Liubai's hand stiffened as he shook his head and said, I never thought about it. She's not willing to look for it. To be honest, besides being able to bring her wind and rain and hold her back, what else can a man do? But a woman carrying a child can be very difficult, said Mrs. Liang with some regret. It's okay, didn't you come here alone? Whether it's hard or tired, I'll just live my life alone. Mrs. Liang pouted as if trying to refute, realizing that she really didn't have a strong stance. Okay, patted Gu Liubai's hand and swayed into the room. In the next few days, Gu Liubai's favorite thing to do is to wander aimlessly on the street. After shaking too many times, in the eyes of some people, Gu Liubai is a middle-aged woman with a mental illness. Well, maybe he doesn't look very good either. But only she knows that she is looking for business opportunities. Where is the toilet? A foreign tourist stood at the entrance of the Peace Hotel and asked a waiter. The young man blushed and gestured helplessly, Can you speak Chinese? Where is the translator next to you? The two of them were talking together, neither of whom was clear about what the other was saying. Gu Liubai patted his thigh and his mind lit up. Isn't this opportunity here? In her past life, taking the TOEFL test could have tortured her to death, but now, Gu Liubai's eyes are shining and her brain is rapidly calculating. She quickly stepped forward, helped her little brother out of the encirclement, and also guided foreign tourists to find the bathroom. Brother, does our restaurant receive many foreign tourists? Not too many, they usually stay at international hotels. Only when they can't stay there, will they come to our place. Gu Liubai nodded and strolled around for several days. I also have a rough idea of the location of the international hotel that the young man mentioned. Without stopping, I turned around and went to the international hotel. I waited at the entrance of the international hotel for several hours and noticed that there were quite a few foreign tourists coming and going, but the English proficiency of those who received them was mostly half-tone. This gives Gu Liubai even more confidence. When I couldn't wait to take action, I lowered my head and glanced at my dusty cotton jacket. After some thought, I decided to go home. At any time, the rule of respecting Luo Yi first and then respecting others remains unchanged. The next day, Gu Liubai changed into a black waistband long suit dress. This is the customized design that Gu Liubai painted for her, specially made by Mrs. Liang. The waist is perfectly tucked, perfectly embellishing her body lines. With light makeup on her face and a complete outfit, she looks several years younger and more refined. Carrying a small bag, Gu Liubai stood in the lobby of the International Hotel. "Hello, may I ask if the manager is available? I have something to talk to him about." After waiting for a few minutes, a man with a square face stood in front of Gu Liubai. "Hello, Gu Fun, currently the head of a travel agency." Actually, Gu Liubai is empty-handed, but she can't hold on to her lotus flower, she talks nonsense. "Hello Ms. Gu, my name is Zhao Xuesheng." The manager slightly bent down and after introducing himself, he turned his head and asked, "May I ask if you have anything to do with me?" Gu Liubai looked around and didn't directly state his purpose. "Are you sure you want to say it here?" The manager looked at the bustling hall and smiled, apologizing and inviting her to the office. "Manager Zhao, I would like to discuss a business deal with your hotel. Are you interested?" Gu Liubai sat on a chair, his tone very plain. Neither deliberately pleasing the other party nor belittling oneself. "Can you provide a detailed introduction?" The manager sat opposite Gu Liubai and looked at her with interest. "As far as I know, your hotel often attracts foreign tourists to stay, and as you know, the country has just resumed the college entrance examination, and the quality of foreign language education is uneven. These foreign tourists will encounter obstacles everywhere while playing, so it is difficult to truly have fun, and they have no knowledge of our country's customs and traditions. This is actually the original intention of our travel agency. Of course, if done well, it can also bring more benefits to the hotel." When facing Zhao Xuesheng, Gu Liubai spoke confidently and strongly stated that this was a win-win situation, and he was very confident in facilitating this transaction. The manager nodded while listening, and after Gu Liubai explained the complete plan, praised, "Ms. Gu's plan is very thoughtful. I don't seem to have any reason not to agree, but we still need to further discuss some details." Of course, but the price we just promised to your hotel is already the most favorable. If it's even higher, our travel agency won't have much profit to offer. We hope you can consider it carefully." The two of them were playing fancy tunes, playing Tai Chi-like, focusing on details bit by bit. The verbal promises gradually became implemented and became contract regulations on paper. 3 days later, Gu Liubai returned to the door and brought the contract he had drafted. After both parties confirmed that there were no issues, he signed and stamped it. Holding a light and floating contract, Gu Liubai's heart hanging high finally fell to the ground. She has been worried about what might go wrong in the middle, but fortunately, everything went smoothly. When receiving foreign tourists, Gu Liubai discovered many business opportunities again. She will parade through the busiest streets with these unscrupulous guests. Because the other party is always attracted by some unique gadgets and cannot walk, which is exactly the result that Gu Liubai wants. Gu Liubai also learned how to develop film negatives and took beautifully composed photos for tourists for free. Perhaps it was these small favors that made Gu Liubai's travel agency flourish in just 6 months. From a solitary individual to a small company that can accommodate over 20 people. No CP, hurry up and write. Don't miss it when passing by the female lead is rolling around, asking for collection, asking for tickets, and asking for comments. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Girls Becoming Mothers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Girls Becoming Mothers. There is still a month and a half before the new year, and the sky is gray with a few scattered snowflakes floating. Inhaling the air from the lungs feels like it can freeze a person to half-death, making them unable to help but miss the warm bedding. Gu Liubai hurriedly arrived home in the darkness. Before she could catch her breath, Mrs. Liang leaned on her cane and slowly walked over. Xiaofan, there are some things that I shouldn't have said as an old lady, but I really can't bear to watch anymore. Empress Liang's face was very serious. She had a stern face, and the warm yellow light shone on her face, as if crossing a layer of golden light. You can't just focus on work. Occasionally, you also need to look at the people around you to see if there has been any change, said the cane as it struck the ground with a rhythmic sound. Gu Liubai patiently listened to Mrs. Liang finish speaking and turned his head to look at the room where Gu Mingrong lived. The room was dark and gloomy, like a fierce beast lurking in the darkness. Gu Liubai suddenly remembered that he had not seen Gu Mingrong for a long time, and a sense of guilt arose in his heart. Aunt Liang, I know now. Gu Liubai helped Mrs. Liang stand up from the chair. The other party hasn't rested so late, so it must be waiting for her. She apologized and said, I have indeed neglected Mingrong a little during this period. Don't worry, I will go and take a look later. The reason why she can work with peace of mind for so long is because she knows that there is an old lady Liang at home. If the other party said this today, it must be something wrong with Gu Mingrong, otherwise she wouldn't have been waiting for her late return in the late night. Turning off the lights for Mrs. Liang, Gu Liubai turned around and left, standing at the door of Gu Mingrong's room. Mingrong, have you slept yet? Can I come in for a moment? Gu Liubai asked in a low voice. With my ears pressed against the door, I could vaguely hear the sound of a small beast whimpering. Is this crying? She pushed the door in, and the snowflakes outside the window fell down like goose feathers. Mingrong, why are you crying? Gu Liubai's voice was somewhat stern. Gu Mingrong did not answer, but the crying in her ear grew louder and louder. Sit up. Gu Liubai turned on the light in the room and saw Gu Mingrong lying on the pillow, his eyes swollen and deformed. Answer me, what are you crying about? Amidst Gu Liubai's constant scolding, Gu Mingrong slowly straightened up. Nothing, Gu Mingrong muttered for a while, but still didn't say anything. Okay, since it's nothing, just wipe away my tears and don't look wronged. No one here wants to see your expression. After Gu Liubai finished speaking, he turned off the light and left without looking back. This action happened to trigger Gu Mingrong's rebellious mentality, and she shouted for Gu Liubai to stop. Why are you so impatient? Can't you comfort me? Gu Mingrong snorted softly. No. Gu Liubai immediately replied, as if staying for an extra second would not show her determination. Gu Mingrong, let me ask you one last time, what are you crying for? Gu Liubai's strong tone put a lot of pressure on Gu Mingrong. I was already unhappy in my heart, thinking that Gu Liubai could comfort her with a few words, but to my surprise, this was the result. I also know that if I keep stuttering, Gu Liubai will definitely leave as soon as he says. At the beginning of school, they laughed at me because I had an accent when I spoke. Later, when I finally learned Mandarin, they laughed at my grades again. I had to endure it twice, but now they are getting even worse. They want me to do their homework and clean up. If I don't want to, they hit me. Gu Mingrong lowered his head, his voice like a mosquito humming, struggling to squeeze out of his mouth. Did you resist? Gu Liubai raised his eyebrows and looked at her. Gu Mingrong shook his head. After not receiving a response from Gu Liubai for a long time, he quickly looked up at her and found that she was standing under the light, with a slightly cold and inexplicable look that made her shiver. This is Gu Liubai, whom she has never seen before. Sister. At this moment, she didn't dare to touch the moldy head left blank, only dared to shout softly, like a coquettish little kitten. Gu Liubai is currently reflecting. Which link went wrong? Was it her wrong educational approach, or was Gu Mingrong still lacking a sense of security in her heart? Causing the other party to encounter something and not dare to resist directly, only crying and complaining to the closest person. Mingrong, let me ask you, what do you want to do now? Gu Mingrong was stopped by the question, and she looked at Gu Liubai with evasive eyes. She spoke for a while but didn't say a reason. At the sight of Gu Mingrong like this, Gu Liubai didn't get angry at all. What she has always adhered to is that when women should be soft, they should be soft, but when they should be tough, they should still stand up. Now that I am by her side, if anything happens in the future, how should she handle herself when she is alone? Then let me ask you, are you willing to be bullied now? Gu Liubai squatted down and looked into Gu Mingrong's eyes. Gu Mingrong shook his head, his eyes filled with sadness. I want you to tell me, are you willing? Not willing to accept it. Speak louder, are you willing? Not willing, not willing, not willing at all. Gu Mingrong suddenly raised his voice and said, isn't that what makes you happy? Even though I have already been bullied, why do you keep pressuring me? Gu Mingrong completely vented his dissatisfaction in his heart, crying bitterly. In the midst of tears, Gu Liubai stood in front of her, looking at her calmly. After crying for a long time, Gu Mingrong's throat was sore and dry, but Gu Liubai didn't stop. I had to wipe away my tears, pout and stare blankly at the shadows on the ground. Have you cried enough? Mm. Gu Mingrong nodded, and a snot bubble appeared on the tip of his nose. Gu Liubai looked both angry and funny. Sister, don't laugh. After crying loudly, Gu Mingrong's mood improved a lot. Sister, what should I do? I don't want to be bullied by them anymore. Go tell the teacher first and see how the teacher solved it. Gu Liubai handed her the handkerchief in his pocket. So. What if the teacher doesn't care? Gu Mingrong asked urgently, with a hint of panic in his eyes. Have you already told me? Gu Mingrong nodded first and then shook his head. I told the teacher, but it didn't work at all, and the teacher also said, why don't they bully others and only bully me? Gu Mingrong suddenly stopped speaking. Gu Liubai is most annoyed by Gu Mingrong's appearance, as she keeps everything to herself and lets those who care about her guess. If you still stutter like this, I'll leave. Gu Liubai now wants to break back Gu Mingrong's twisted personality and talk about things properly. When encountering sadness, it's best to cry bitterly. You can be weak, but before being weak, you need to learn to solve problems. Don't. I said. Gu Mingrong grabbed Gu Liubai's hem and didn't let her leave. The teacher also said that if I know my shortcomings and my studies are poor, I should work hard and not provoke any more trouble. Just as Gu Mingrong finished speaking, Gu Liubai's heart suddenly burned. What the hell kind of teacher, just teaching? I never thought there would be 2 words after teaching. Call it nurturing. In her heart, it was quite unpleasant. She had already regarded Gu Mingrong and Mrs. Liang as her own people, and only she could bully them. If outsiders dared to bully them, she could pounce and bite them to death. Okay. Gu Liubai caressed Gu Mingrong's back. Don't worry, tomorrow morning, I'll go to school with you. Now lie in bed and sleep peacefully. Gu Liubai tucked her in the corner and was about to leave her room. Sister, can I sleep with you tonight? Just like when we first moved in. Okay, Gu Liubai's heart softened. However, some fundamental issues cannot be ignored. It seems that Gu Mingrong needs to pay more attention to her education after that. She was also busy with work during this period and simply ignored Gu Mingrong. End of this chapter.